California is a beautiful state, and Southern California is an extremely popular vacation destination with attractions like the Hollywood sign, Universal Studios Hollywood, Beverly Hills Rodeo Drive, the Walk of Fame, Grauman's Chinese Theater, and more. Unfortunately, all of that is currently under the threat of burning to the ground. Much of the Los Angeles area is burning in wildfires, and while we are praying for those affected, we also have to wonder, how is this going to affect California's tourist economy, and when are they going to get these fires under control? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another video of excellence here at Follow the Bradleys Fun. Today we are discussing news that is maybe not so much fun. The wildfires burning currently in the Los Angeles area of California. And I am fortunate enough today to be joined by two excellent panelists, both of whom have lived in the Los Angeles area, so they can provide their expertise on this current situation. So please do click that like button as we welcome to the panel Lou Wasserman's Ghost and joined later by Lorena Creole. This is out of USA Today covering this. This says evacuation orders lifted after Hollywood Hills fire endangers iconic Los Angeles landmarks. And there's some video happening. Palisades fire, the bulldozer is clearing and abandoned cars on the street in Sunset Boulevard. The firemen are wearing gas masks. This is tragic. This is just you know, when you see it in the movies, it's not like real life. Like, you see it in the movie and it's so easy to distance yourself from what that damage would be like, because your brain is going, yes, I know I'm watching this, and I also know that that's not reality. When it actually happens and it is reality, it hits so much harder. So there was a point in time in my life, it says this fire is one of several deadly fires growing in Los Angeles Hills. There was a point in time in my life when I lived actually at the base of a mountain in Monroe, Utah, and Monroe Mountain was on fire. Like, I actually moved in to a place when that happened. The fire burned for, I want to say, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe, while I was there, and they finally got it out. I think it was they were able to contain it and let it, and then it burned out. But it was so weird living in a place where I would go out at night and look up and see this entire mountain on fire. I guess none of us were evacuated because they must have known that they were able to contain it. But it was like I often thought, are we okay here? Like, but the mayor of the town was saying they were okay.
You know, the other thing about the intense winds, it means that the water dropping planes and helicopters can't fly. So normally they'd be hitting the front lines of it to try and keep it from getting further with fire retardant filled water, but they can't do that in 100-mile-an-hour winds, 90-mile-an-hour winds.
No, that's crazy too. It's like hurricane level winds are carrying these fires. So out of USA Today, Los Angeles, fire activity has decreased and evacuation orders have been lifted after another fast-moving brush fire erupted in Los Angeles on Wednesday night, this time in the iconic Hollywood Hills, adding strain to firefighting efforts in Southern California. The Los Angeles Fire Department issued an evacuation order shortly after 6 p.m. local time Wednesday for portions of the Hollywood Hills, a celebrity-populated neighborhood in central Los Angeles. As of 9:45 p.m. local time, the blaze, dubbed the Sunset Fire, consumed at least 60 acres and remained 0% contained, according to CAL FIRE. Fire activity has decreased. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's West Hollywood station said on X the fire has been updated to be 60 to 100 acres, but is now mostly burning within the perimeter. LAFD worked quickly to develop. Mandatory evacuations were issued for Laurel Canyon Boulevard on the west to Mulholland Drive on the north, to the 101 freeway on the east, down to Hollywood Boulevard on the south. Evacuating warnings were also issued for areas north of Sunset Boulevard between the city of Beverly Hills and the neighborhood of Hollywood. The majority of evacuation orders were lifted about 2 hours after they were issued, but the area of North Franklin from Camino Palmero Street to North Sierra Bonito Avenue will remain closed until Thursday morning to ensure no flare-ups endanger residents, the Los Angeles Fire Department said in its most recent update. Residents are asked to be cautious when returning to their homes because firefighters are continuing to work in their neighborhoods, Los Angeles Fire Department spokesman Margaret Stewart said in a statement. CAL FIRE said the LAFD was responding to the blaze. Los Angeles Police Department officers were deployed to Hollywood to assist with alleviating evacuation traffic, according to Mayor Karen Bass. We are working urgently to close roads, redirect traffic, and expand access for LAFD vehicles to respond to the growing fire, Bass said on a statement on X. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's West Hollywood Station advised people to keep clear of the area for emergency personnel and warned residents to be prepared, pack important documents, and gather family, children, and pets now. The city of Beverly Hills.
That idea of having a kind of a go bag of all the important stuff is very, very important.
Yeah, we are encouraged, I know, to have at least a 3-day or 72-hour emergency kit ready to go and all of those types of things. Even, you always have to prepare for hurricane season here too. The city of Beverly Hills said on X, its fire department is closely monitoring the Sunset Fire, which sparked near homes and the popular Runyon Canyon hiking trails. The city said authorities have declared parts of Beverly Hills areas north of Sunset Boulevard and east of Coldwater Canyon Drive as a voluntary evacuation zone. But,
and by the way, when you hear about the city of Beverly Hills, up in the hills there at the top, there are lots of parts of Laurel Canyon and around there that are technically not in the city of Beverly Hills, but they're in a Beverly Hills zip code because the mail comes through Beverly Hills. So there's kind of a nebulous line there as far as what is and what isn't part of. Beverly Hills is only 6 square miles in total area. So there's
I want to bring in another former Los Angelite who had lived there. Please welcome to the stage, La Reina Creole. Good morning, Lorena.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, but honestly, my heart's really broken. I joke about my time living in LA, but for me, one of my biggest dreams as a kid, I was like, I want to move to California. I want to live, in Los Angeles, and I got the chance to do that. And looking at all the destruction that's going on, I didn't live not too far from there. I lived in Sherman Oaks, like right near the intersection of Sepulveda and Ventura Boulevard. And I would go down those canyon roads many, many times. And you would always see these, you knew when wildfire season was. And I was always nervous when the winds would kick up and, they'd have those.
You got to remember how dry it is. And so everything is just tinder.
Yes. And that's something that I was not used to seeing, because on the East Coast, you get a ton of rain. So everything's pretty much green. But living in California, so much stuff was just dry, and all it would take is just the wind kicking up and a brush fire, could start whether naturally or by someone with, very, very nefarious and evil intent. And next thing you know, stuff goes up like a tinderbox. So seeing like the fire that got started, I think like over in Studio City, of all places, it is really heartbreaking, especially a lot of those old parts in Hollywood, a lot of old Hollywood history, and some of that's going up in smoke. I mean, it really is heartbreaking.
Some of the mention, I know there was talk about Universal shutting down, which they did, but they're pretty good about brush clearance around their area because they got a big piece of land and it extends beyond the actual buildings and sets. When they had their fire several years ago, while I was working there, and I'll never forget walking in there the next morning and seeing the destruction of it, It was an arsonist. It was actually a member of their security force, which was at that time outsourced to a company called, are you ready? Burns Security. And this guy had lit the fire that burned down so much of Universal. But they're pretty darn good about keeping a buffer zone. Other people are not so good on brush clearance, and that's the big thing. You got to keep it away.
I heard the Getty Center
Yeah.
was real good about that, and I was very glad to hear that because I used to drive by the Getty Center regularly. So I'm glad to hear that, they had a plan intact.
Yeah, and also the villa in Malibu,
Do you know about the Skirball Cultural Center?
Yeah, I don't know what their plans are, but they're right there in the canyon too.
Yeah.
So it's if you're careful and if you have enough, if it isn't your land, you may not be legally able to go do something about it. And that's where you kind of hope and expect that the government will do what they should. But lately it's, we have to preserve all those weeds. They're a natural treasure. Sure they are.
Now, one of the things that I had heard is there's some particular, this actually goes up to Canada, I think. There's some particular type of fish that they're protecting that they cannot.
Delta smelt.
Yeah.
There's some fish that they're trying to protect, and that's the reason why they can't redirect water into the reservoirs, the mountains. What are they don't call them? Do they call them reservoirs? The big water.
I know the farmers up north, like in I want to say the Sacramento area, it's like their water was restricted because of the darn Delta smelt. So
if you drive up I-5 through the Central Valley, you'll see signs on all the farms. Hey, give us back our water.
Yes.
Yeah, it's and I've driven so my time out there. I did not live in Los Angeles. I lived in Las Vegas. I lived there from 1999 to 2002, and I went down to Los Angeles quite a bit during that time period. And the last time I was out there was, I want to say 2011. I stayed in my friend's apartment that was right across the street from Palisade Park in Santa Monica. And, I was just thinking about the hills right there, and then Santa Monica, the pier, and Venice Beach and Muscle Beach and all that. I have heard that that's not too far away from the fires, but it's not right there.
It's not right in the midst of it. By the way, for those of you who think you've never seen the pier there in Santa Monica, if you've seen the Sting, that's where the merry-go-round building is in the Sting. They matte painted in the rest of Chicago behind it. But that building exists. So
there, I know that the pier, the Santa Monica Pier, is in it's in a lot of movies. It's in a ton of movies, and it's fun. Fun to go out there. The whole reason I'm covering this on this channel is because it affects.
Well, and God bless them for anticipating and closing down for a couple of days, because the last thing you would want is a park full of people that you suddenly had to get out of there again, jamming the roads and resulting maybe, if there was a fire, in that same scene we've seen in Palisades of all the cars being abandoned because of the traffic.
And what about the Walk of Fame, Hollywood Boulevard, Grauman's Chinese Theater? Oh my gosh,
Grauman's Theater, the Formosa, this like little restaurant there in Hollywood, Chinese restaurant, which is
next to the studios. Yes.
Yeah, next to the studios. What about the Smokehouse in Burbank? Okay, I'm being facetious here, but trust me, the Smokehouse in Burbank, and Lou knows what I'm talking about.
Garlic bread, the best in the universe.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I'd never seen a spread like that in my life for like a buffet. I was like, this is insane.
Yeah, but when you worked at Warner Brothers on anything, you wound up there for dinner about once a week, coming across the street. But yeah,
look at some of these images. This is the Eaton fire in Altadena. Just the man trying to put it out. And then this is again Eaton fire in Altadena, California. I mean, these are a lot of people don't realize that it's not it's not like the LA area is tremendously huge. If it always takes a long time to get around because of traffic, but if there were no traffic, it wouldn't take very long to get around it. It's not a tremendously huge area. All these areas are close.
The city of LA is 250 some odd square miles.
Mm-hmm.
The county is about 480.
Yeah.
And so when you consider it's really a state of mind that goes from out where the road peters out going to Vegas, all the way out to Palm Springs and all the way down basically to Pendleton. It's a pretty big area, and then up to Montecito and Santa Barbara. But
I mean, as far as like Hollywood and like I remember being out there, and yes, that is it's big. But as far as like driving around it, it's pretty easy to get around. In other words, these areas are close enough that anything could be affected by the wind blowing in a certain direction. As far as the fires are concerned,
carries in the wind and then drops someplace where there wasn't a fire, and boom, there's some more.
Yeah, and it's very densely populated,
right?
As well, especially that 101 corridor between Ventura Boulevard. Then you've got Coldwater Canyon, Laurel Canyon. I mean, it is dense full of people. We're talking about, and for folks who don't know, this isn't like there are just houses, in the flats. You've got houses that are shoved up every square space in the hills, okay, which makes it, even...
Which, of course, has scared a lot of people to leave because of earthquakes. I have some dear friends. He's a lawyer for one of the biggest directors in the history of directing. And they moved to Whistler in Vancouver because his wife wouldn't go back in the house. They had one of those houses on stilts.
The ones that slid into the... No,
this one didn't go anywhere, but they were worried it might the next
time. Oh, okay.
But anyway, it's a wilderness out there. And aside from that, you've got coyotes wandering the streets all the time because they're coming in from the country, so to speak. At the LA Zoo, they have to take all the flamingos in the flamingo pond into a building at night. Otherwise, the coyotes would come down and get them. You're living on the edge of, nature. And it doesn't seem like it because you're in a busy city with lots of houses and people, but still, if without the water projects that originally made it possible, it's a desert. And deserts don't burn because there isn't all this stuff to burn, but you put people in houses and things.
Oh my gosh!
And
just to look at all this destruction.
You walk through there. In fact, when in our neighborhood, there were so many burnt cars that the fire chief said, "Well, there's got to be more dead people in here. They didn't leave. The cars are here." The people had second cars and third cars. One car, a guy I know had a very collector's item Corvette. And the firemen rolled it out of the garage and into one of the little parks in the neighborhood, so it was away from the fire. But when the fire chief said, "Better bring in the cadaver dogs," and they went in one house and they got a big hit. Turns out it was the woman's husband's ashes that were in an urn on the mantelpiece that fell down and broke open, and that's what the dogs were smelling. So you hear all these crazy stories, but they're all true.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of strange stuff that comes out in these situations.
Oh my gosh. Altadena, for some folks who don't know, that's a place that's got a lot of houses that have been there for
beautiful
decades.
Craftsmen and arts and crafts.
Yes.
Just gorgeous. Yeah.
Look at this is a telling photograph of firefighter sits on a chair amid the remains of a burnt structure along the PCH Pacific Coast Highway. Powerful winds and fueling devastating wildfires, forcing people to evacuate in Malibu. And Zuma Beach is one of my favorite beaches that I've ever been on. And as much as I could when I lived in that area or was down there, I would try to drive up to Zuma Beach, which is in Malibu, and it's a really nice. I actually saw a really cool out in the water. I saw a gray whale not too far off the shore there one time. It's and there's houses all around that area. It's just this is just so.
Back in the day, my wife is just reminding me when we lived in Burbank, we lived on the hill up above Burbank Airport there, just across the freeway from the airport.
Yeah. Hmm.
And the fire marshals came and said, you got to clear that hill all the way down. And we had to pay a guy to come back every year and do it. Now, I don't know if they're still doing that. And of course, we've been through a few disasters. That was one of the strangest ones, which was after 9/11, when they brought all the airplanes in the sky down anywhere they could. And Burbank Airport looked like a parking lot for airplanes. But of course, there were none taking off or landing for the first time in forever. So I've seen fire and I've seen rain. And then, of course, you have to remember, when all of this ground cover burns, the next time it rains, everything washes down the hill. And
Hmm.
you get floods and you get mudslides. So,
Jeez. So you're what I want to get from both of you, since you've lived out there, what are your assessments of the likelihood of losing structures like the Hollywood sign, the Hollywood Bowl, the observatory, uh, the Hollywood Boulevard, any of those things that, like, the area way better than I do. As you've been observing this and kind of watching what's going on, what are you seeing as far as, does it look like the fires are going to get contained before they hit any of these things? Are they going to be protected? Is it going to be okay?
Doesn't help that there's no water in the fire hydrants.
Yeah, well,
It sure doesn't.
Oh, how?
We could go on about the politics forever, and I don't want to get into that. But
Yeah.
no, that's not what I want to get into here.
This is not a result of global warming or anything else. It's a result of mismanagement.
Yeah.
They cut, I don't know how many $1 million it was from the budget of the LA Fire Department. They just cut personnel, and they just announced that they were hiring based on DEI standards, not on physical standards that you used to hire firemen by. So you reap what you sow.
Policy wise, none of it makes sense. I will say this about politics very, very, very quickly, because I don't really want to get into politics about this, but it bothers me that the governor talked about the person who's not even president yet, president-elect. He talked about him politicizing this situation, but we have to remember that the word politics comes from the word policy. Okay, a politician is somebody who affects policy, and policy is something that is the whole point of policies, laws. They are protect people. That's the government's job mainly, is to allow people freedom but protect them. And basically,
and that's why we pay property taxes and state income taxes in some place. That's where the money comes from.
And there's plenty. There should be plenty of money in California. What do they pay, like 10.5% income tax?
Well, yes, there's plenty of money. However, spending it wisely where it needs to go is a different thing in and of itself. One of the things that I noticed when I first moved there, besides the 10% income tax, that's the one thing where I was like, screw this, I'm leaving the state. With just the bills that they would put, I keep calling it the Save the Whales bills, because it seemed like every other pet freaking project they want money for, save this, money for this project here, this project there. And I'm like, have you noticed where you live here? In LA, and the structure and how dry it is, and nobody wants to be stuck, in a fire. I've seen the towering inferno. I'm just like, no, who wants to do that? But here's what they spend. The city of LA, I don't know what it is. I do know what it is. They just seem so ignorant. And I would say this is within the past 10 years, because 20, 30 years ago, you didn't hear about this stuff happening. You had the occasional forest fire that would break out, but it was nowhere on the level of destruction that we're seeing now. It's just like they're just completely ignorant about it. And it's so sad, because you have the people who can least afford it who wind up paying the most because of this, with their property and, the property and lives.
And just the cost of living, because,
oh my gosh, yes.
I'll give you an idea. When we were planning to leave and move here, which is Tennessee, there's an outfit online, a wonderful website if you just want to research things about various places in America. It's called city-data.com. And in there, they have a little gizmo. You put in the zip code of where you live now and the zip code that you're thinking of moving to, and an annual income figure. and they tell you if you're making that amount here, here's what you need to have the same lifestyle in the other place, based on fuel, based on property taxes, based on all the basic stuff of life. My wife had a second job at that time that was making 75 grand. So I put in 75 grand. I put in the zip code where we lived, which at that time was Sylmar, this area that's being burned. And I put in a town called Spring City, Tennessee, which is up the river from us. For a $75,000 income in LA, you could live there for $27,000.
Wow.
Okay. Now, did you have everything that's in LA? Probably not. But for God's sakes, when it's that stark and that different,
you could save enough money to fly to LA whenever you want.
Well, see, when I left, I figured I'd go back and visit. I haven't been back since. So,
oh my goodness,
I can't bring myself to go. I want to go back. Every time I think about going back to visit, I'm just like, no, I don't think so. And I asked, my daughter, camera girl, who was born in Burbank, I'm like, do you want to go back to visit California? She's like, no.
There are definitely things that I absolutely want to go back to California for and see. And it's sad for me. There are performances in the Hollywood Bowl that I watch on, YouTube. And I'm like, man, I would love to have seen that performance live at the Hollywood Bowl. There's just some
I have so many wonderful memories of the bowl.
Same here. I've been there too, the Hollywood Bowl.
And God, I remember the greatest one was Chuck Mangione, The Children of Sanchez. Because I went to my uncle's 4th wedding, and I mentioned I was going the next day to go buy tickets. People said, get me too, get me too, get me too. We wound up with 6 boxes in a row right down front and brought food and carried on. And oh my God, was that a memory?
Oh no. There's so many. One of the reasons why I wanted to move to Los Angeles was to be able to go and see these places in person. I mean, like being able to drive in Beverly Hills, and in my mind, I'm recalling that scene from Beverly Hills Cop, the first one where the drive. I mean, to be able
you're looking around and you're like, wow.
Yeah, and I'm just like, okay, oh, that is the Beverly Hills, police station, or all of these amazing places where iconic films were shot.
When you're born there and you grow up there, I remember my grandfather, who came over from Europe in the 1920s. And I would say, I'm going to France, or I'm going to wherever. And he'd say, yeah, but have you been to Cucamonga? Or he would say, big deal, Europe. I was born there, So it's all your perspective. It's why, for example, living in Southern California, growing up there, when I came to Disney World, the hotel that I was indifferent to, that so many people love, was the Poly. Because in Southern California, there's apartment buildings that look like that, for God's sake.
Yeah, it is.
Big fake Easter Island heads in front of them. And, poo-poo platters are everywhere, because of Don the Beachcomber and all those. Yes, the Will Rogers house burned down, Andy. It was his house in the polo field.
Oh, my gosh.
It's totally burned down. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, what about has anybody heard anything about the Magic Castle? That was threatened.
So far, so good, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to my panelists, Lou Wasserman and Lorena Creole, for being here for this video today. And as these fires continue to rage, we pray for the Californians that are affected as we continue to monitor the situation and hope and pray for the best. Thank you so much for coming in to watch this video today. Please like, share, subscribe, click that notifications bell, and of course, please share your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, continue prayers for everybody that's affected. We will see you real soon. Thank you so much, everyone.